Hello again, class. In our last presentation, we learned various examples of the Jewish law in the Torah, and now we are going to learn how Jews interpret the law. So we're going to talk a little bit about the rabbinic tradition. We'll talk about some of the differences in Jewish denominations in the United States, and then I'll just say a couple of words on the Shoah or the Holocaust. So according to Rabbi Jonah Steinberg, although the fundamental demand of the Torah is action and practical observance, he further argues that the religious laws or halakha of the Torah invite speculation and encourage theorization. In other words, although the purpose of the law is to follow the law, the entire history of Judaism has been defined by a rabbinic tradition in which rabbis or teachers try to make sense of the meaning of the religious law. Thus, the Jewish theological tradition is one where rabbis continually interpret and reinterpret the meaning and practice of halakha, or the sacred law. So in other words, the whole history of Judaism is not just about practicing the law, but it's also about discussing and reinterpreting the law. Now, one of the debates that rabbis and Jewish theologians faced in the late 19th and early 20th centuries was the following. How strictly should Jews follow the religious law in the modern world? So as Jews were kind of entering modernity, this question of how strictly to follow the law became quite prevalent. Now, in the United States, this question of how extensively Jews should follow the religious law resulted in the formation of several Jewish denominations, each with a different answer to this question. So generally speaking, there are three major types of Jewish denominations in the U.S. today: Orthodox Judaism, Conservative Judaism, and Reform Judaism. So according to Orthodox Jews, the laws of the Torah are perfect and eternal, and therefore should be followed strictly by Jews in today's society. Now, exactly how these laws are followed are influenced by classical rabbinic interpretation, as found in the Mishnah and in the Talmud. So, according to Orthodox Jews, how extensively should the Jewish law be followed? It should be followed strictly. And the primary guidance on how to observe the law should be taken from classical rabbinic sources. Now, according to conservative Jews, the laws of the Torah are divinely inspired and should be followed faithfully. So exactly how these laws are followed are influenced by contemporary rabbinic interpretation. So for conservative Jews, one should make a concerted effort to follow the law. But conservative Jews do argue that in addition to classic rabbinic interpretation, that contemporary rabbinic interpretation should also be taken under account when trying to understand which laws are in a sense more important to follow than others. And according to Reform Jews, the laws of the Torah are general guidelines for living and should be followed in moderation. That is, certain laws are ancient and outdated and should not be followed in modern society. So again, for Reform Jews, follow the law in moderation. We're living in the modern world today, and some of these laws are just outdated and should be kind of ignored, and others should be followed more strictly than others. Now, understanding this variation in Jewish theology and practice in the U.S. is important because we will see that different denominations take different stances on moral issues. And how they take stances on moral issues really depends upon how they view, interpret, and observe the sacred Jewish law. Now, just a word on the Shoah as a conclusion. So needless to say, the Shoah, also known as the Holocaust, continues to have a major impact on Jewish thought and identity. Now, theologically, the Shoah has raised two major questions in the Jewish tradition. One is concerning the problem of evil. So one question that Jewish theologians continually grapple with, even today, is this question of how can an all-good, all-powerful God allow for such an atrocity to happen? And secondly, how ought Jews to be in relationship to the rest of the world? That is, should Jews protect and insulate themselves from a world that has been hostile to them throughout history? Or should Jews, as victims of the Holocaust, play a more active role in the eradication of violence and injustice in the world? So again, we're kind of returning to this question of election. Again, what does it mean to be elect? Does it mean to become that the Jewish people should protect and insulate themselves from the outside world and practice their laws and traditions faithfully within that more isolated society? Or should Jews, again, as victims of the Holocaust, actually play a more active role? That is, because they were victims of the Holocaust, that they should try to ensure that something like the Holocaust never happens again. So again, two different reactions to this cataclysmic event in Jewish history.